Welcome back, and we'll continue now with our next part 11 of a series on the step-by-step restoration of a Singer Model 337. If you watched part 10 and you ever have the time, I really appreciate your comments, not on the video itself. I know I'm an amateur with that, but your comments about the cleaning method that I use now, what you thought of it, and if you liked any of the method or if you didn't like it. But continuing on here, when you wash it that way and dry it, you really want to get it as dry as possible. And here's why. A lot of these oil ports, you see that round right there to the right of the gear. The cleaner and water can get in there, which is okay for me because I want to get all the old gunk out. And maybe you watch till the end with that bucket full of black water. But after a cleaning like this, what my wife calls the wash and sew, you need to get some oil on this right away, because every lubricant, oil and grease that was still providing any protection to the metal is gone. So I'm doing a handheld video here, just in an attempt to try and show you how clean this is. Most of the metal is shiny. The varnishing on the needle bar and some of these parts is gone. You see the main mechanisms up here looking good. Let me put this portable light down, and I'll turn this here, and you can see the main shaft area. Maybe you can get to see inside here. This cred cutter, for me, just it's almost miraculous how easily and quickly it cuts through all that stuff. So here's the mechanisms for the hook down here. The whole body is clean. All the shafts, rockers, counterweight, everything. But because of that too, there is no protection. So I dry it as much as I can, and I come in and I start to put oil on it. And usually at this point, I'm lucky if I can turn the shaft and make the gears move, and the needle bar go up and down, and the hook spin around, because it is just so dry, lacking any kind of lubrication, that it can be, very hard to get up here and turn this. So I usually just start oiling it and turning it a little bit, oiling it, turning it. Once I get everything moving pretty good, that's when I get out my little paintbrush and do the gears. This is the worm gear, and down here, and that gear on the bottom, this is the little cam stack. And I don't know if you remember, it was all black and sticky and dirty brown. And after I cleaned it, when I came in, I inspected it, and I did have to do a little bit more cleaning. If you can see where that's down in here. A couple of these spaces between the gear and then way back in here, like between that gear and the aluminum side, was still a little bit of the stuff, the gunk. So I took that barbecue stick and, you know, I got in here and scraped it down, rotated the as much as I could, got as much as I could, scraped it out, used a toothpick, and then I just took some cotton swabs, dabbed them in alcohol, and cleaned up the stuff I'd scraped out. So they really came. Oh boy, it's hard to turn, but they really got really nice and clean now. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mount the camera on a tripod, and then you know, using the oil points that are in the instruction manual, which are the same ones that are in the repair and service guide, I'm going to try and hit those oil points and get some protection on all of these gears and everything that's moving here. So let me set up on the tripod and then I'll be back. Okay, I'm got the camera back on the tripod here, and I'm going to start oiling this. One thing, if you do use this Tri-Flow, just a reminder that you really have to shake it up good. That Teflon is, you know, there's not an additive to keep it mixed together or anything like that, because the additives usually dry up and leave the varnishing and stickiness. Like 3-in-1 oil has a lot of additives. So just before you use it, you just want to shake it up good to mix all that lovely Teflon in there. These products come with a little tube to stick in there, which I find really useful. I'm a very big believer in using less oil and grease. I mean, you need enough to lubricate and protect everything, but as I've witnessed dozens of times, over maintenance, what I call over maintenance, most of the oil and grease gets thrown all over the machine and just collects dust and dirt and thread dust and so forth. However, since I have really stripped this machine of everything, before I'm finished with it, I'll probably oil it, you know, at least 3 times. So I'm a little bit generous when I go to put this stuff on, especially on the shafts up in here and the places where you actually drop oil down inside, not so much on the outside like a needle bar, because I want to kind of build that up. But the main thing is to get some oil on here. So I don't know how close you will see this, but your instruction manual for your machine, which I've showed you how to get free, and the service manuals all talk about the oil points for your particular machine. So I think you'll get the general idea here. You want to oil anything that moves, metal to metal. I'm going to put some down in here on the hook also, and again, I looked over the guide. You always follow the guide to see you know, where you want to be with this. Let's see what's the best way to show you this. I'm not sure here. Yeah, that might give you a good view, but my oil's not going to go down into the machine. Well, let's see if I can get it. Maybe I can hold it at an angle for you and get this plastic out of here. I'll try my left-handed oil, which may or may not work too good. But what I'm talking about is like to get into this shaft, you see that rather large hole there, and you see how that tube will go down in there. Now normally when I'm just oiling a machine for regular maintenance, I'll put a drop in there, maybe 2. I'm going to put 4 or 5. I usually put a drop here. I'm going to put a couple. There's another oil point right here. I can see it. And that's what oils the bearing for this shaft. And again, everything, I've stripped everything out of here. So I want to be kind of generous replacing stuff. These surface metal, you know, a drop or 2 is probably going to be enough. And I'll show you what I do with that paint brush in a moment. And just remember, on plastic gears, don't put anything. On metal gears, only put grease. And I only use this Tri-Flow clear synthetic grease with Teflon because it clings to the gear really good. It doesn't get thrown all over the place. And the Teflon is very, very superior for lubrication. So I think that's pretty good. I guess I'll show you the bottom here. If we can get in here at all. Well, you might be able to see that pretty good. Again, all the little points, like a place like this that actually has a oil port or oil hole. This first time, I'm going to put a few drops in there till it kind of backs up. Where you oil that it's just kind of a metal on metal situation. You know, a drop or 2 is okay for now. Again, as time goes by that I'm completing the restoration of this, I'm going to do this 2 or 3 more times. And then I will wipe off all of the excess oil because I don't want to leave it in there. I just spent a lot of time getting it all out of there. So let's see if this, oh yeah, it's starting to turn a little bit easier now. I've got some metal on there. What'll really help is when I actually put grease on the gears. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good for the first re-lubrication. See, there is a spot in there that I can see. I know you're not going to be able to. The stuff in the service manual and instruction manual about oiling would be like for the homeowner who bought this. You know, where do you want to oil it, and where do you want to put grease? When you get into a machine like this, you're going to see metal that slides on metal and rubs on metal that the homeowner normally wouldn't. And I always put some lubrication on there because it's open and I have access to it. And I figure whatever factory coating or whatever oil got to be on there is long gone. So you can see now this is becoming a lot easier to do. And you'll get the feel for this when you do it. If you do this by hand before you wash it and after, it's still in no way smooth. And most of that is going to be this gearing system. You've got the 2 gears here, the one that sits vertical and the one that sits horizontal below it. Those 2 mesh together. and the worm gear there that meshes with the gear on the bottom of the cam stack. And let's see if I can get down here maybe. I don't know if that's going to be any better, really. Yeah, this is pretty easy to do when you're not trying to make a a video of it. I think maybe you can see this. So the way that I do this, I showed you my two brushes. I usually use the red one for oil, so I remember, and the tan or beige one for grease. So while I've got this up here, I usually put some grease in a cup, or oil in a cup, and I get the brush in there and I wipe off the excess, and I actually go and put a light coating of oil on all of this exposed metal. I don't want it to rust. I want to protect it. I do not put oil on the grease. I mean on the gears, because again, that's grease only. So I will go and do this on the whole front, across the top, all those bars you saw on the bottom, even the aluminum stuff. I'll put just brush a light coating of oil. I don't do the very end of the shaft right now because I have to turn that to do some of the other work. But all of that exposed metal, not the chrome, but you know, I go through and oil everything I'm supposed to oil, and then I'll brush this oil on all the exposed metal. And again, I'll wipe all that off at a later time. Before I start sealing everything up. But I want to probably now get the grease, and well, let me show you what I mean when I'm still talking about oiling some of this stuff. If you remember the view we had in the earlier video, see if I got any light left here. Yeah. So you can see I did some of this earlier. I just put a light coating on all this metal, and I'm wanting to protect it from the elements. And to me, it's almost like sealing. You know, like, I don't know, after you sanded and stained a piece of wood, then you're going to put sealer or varnish or oil on it or something. It's almost like that, because you might be surprised if you use this method to see that dry, bare metal. So that's how I would go through all the exposed metal in there. You turn this over and come under here with this. You only need a small amount in there, and you just, you know, wipe the excess off, and you're just going to go over all of the bare metal here. I even do the aluminum. Even though you saw the 50-year-old aluminum before I cleaned it, there was some oxidation, but it oxidates a lot slower than steel, which oxidates a lot slower than iron. But all this kind of stuff, I'm going to go around and put just a light coating on all of it. And once I've got everything oil coated, I'll seal this up, and then I'll stop for a minute, and I'll go grab my grease, and I'll check the camera and see if I can get the best angle for you to see the gears. So when I put grease on the gears, you'll you'll be able to see it, hopefully. Don't go away. All right. I kind of moved my camera and moved everything, and I think this might work. I'm looking through the back of the camera now, and I'm seeing the pretty good shot of the worm gear. Directly below your line of vision here is where it meshes with the cam stack gear, and you can't see that, but that's okay because I don't put any grease on the cam stack gear. And what you can see over here is the vertical gear of the upper shaft, and right at the bottom over here behind here, I don't think you'll be able to, yeah, you can't really see it, behind the needle positioning lever is where it meshes down in here, and you can't see it, but that's okay because I don't put any grease on that gear either. I put the grease on the most accessible gear, and then by rotating the shaft I spread it to the other gear. So that's what we're going to do here. And the product I'm going to use is another Tri-Flow product. Tri-Flow Clear Synthetic Grease. Waterproof, prevents rust and corrosion, and chemically resistant, non-staining, yay, formulated with PTFE. So that's the product I use for all those good reasons that I just listed. Let's see, where are we? There we go. You can try and see that. Maybe if I put that there, you'll be able to see. I just push up, I mean, not even 1/4 of an inch of that grease. And then I'll take the tip of the brush and take about half of that. So, I don't know, can you kind of see how much is on there? There you go. And then I'm going to gently start brushing this right on the teeth or grooves of the gear. Any grease that's not on the teeth or groove of the gear is wasted grease, and it's just going to be a big, huge dust magnet. So I probably spread that amount that you just saw and what's not left on the brush to about 1/3 of that worm gear. So I'm going to rotate so the top part I had grease will go down just above the gear on the cam stack. And I'm going to get some more of this and get another little dab on there, and I'm going to carefully put it in the grooves of that worm gear. I've seen videos online of people really slathering grease on these gears, and I have to laugh because one of them is a well-visited site about 221, the little featherweights, and the owner of that website sells their own grease for the featherweight. It comes in these neat little tube plastic, syringes that have a curved tip. And when she shows, when she shows how to put that on the featherweight, she does talk about how it's got to go on the gear, but to me she puts enough grease on those gears to do 5 or 6 machines. It's like, wow. But then I thought, well, if I was selling grease, I'd probably want people to use that much grease too if I was making a profit selling it. The grease that I'm showing you can always buy for about $10 a tube on eBay. There's a lot of sellers of it. I looked about an hour ago and I saw a reputable vendor on eBay selling it for $8.67 a tube with free shipping, and then I found another one selling it for $7.64. So I would have bought it, except this is a 3-ounce tube and it's already a year old, and I do a few machines a year, you know, plus I maintain my wife's 6 machines. So once I get this spread all the way around, it hasn't spread to all of this because of the gear ratio, but I want to start putting some now over here on the main shaft vertical gear. And when I do that, I even take a smaller amount, because it's just a little, it's a very small gear. And again, anything not on the teeth of this gear is not going to spread to the other gear, and is just going to, you know, get, well, it's pretty hard to throw this off. I've seen it do it at top speed. One of the machines I did is 1100 stitches per minute, and I blasted it all the way up and it threw a couple specks of the gear, of the grease off. But I just go in, and mostly I do the, I don't know what I call the smaller tip of the gear. You know, as you look at the gear on the left side, the gear kind of comes like that and gets a bigger diameter, I guess, at the back. And I try and get it more towards the smaller diameter of the gear, but as long as I'm getting it on the teeth right now, I'm happy. Same thing, I'll rotate it, and I get a little bitty more and go in there and put it on there. And you know, as careful as I am, I always get some on the shaft, and then after it meshes good, you always get some that, you know, you can tell it builds up because the gear will push it to the end and it'll just sit there on the end. And I'll go back in with the brush and respread it. I'll probably do this again after I'm done restoring the machine and done some test sewing, and I'm ready to deliver it or put it up for sale. I'll probably go in and lightly do this, and then I'll carefully wipe off all the excess I can with a Q-tip, or, you know, a little piece of cotton rag. But we definitely, you want to do this as soon as you can after you wash it with the crud cutter. It's funny, I have a daughter who's an artist, and graduated with a fine arts degree and all that stuff, and I always think of her when I'm doing this, because she stopped by once and I had this set of brushes out before I cut it down, and she was all excited because she thought I was going to try my hand at watercolors. I'm about as far from an artist as you can get. So when I explained it was for my sewing machine, she was like, oh, okay, well, whatever, have fun. So I've got that pretty good. So what I would do now is maybe grab a rag or something to help me. Can't see it, but because there's no hand wheel on here, it's just this bare metal so it can help me get a grip. So I want to turn it, and you can tell how much you're rotating this gear because there's a pattern, the zigzag pattern on here to tell you it's the zigzag cam. So I'm going to go around like that. It is getting easier to turn now that I've got some oil on the machine, and especially this grease on the gears. That's gonna help a lot. I've made more than a half rotation of that cam stack now, and you can, if you could see it, you can get, like, I can go back in here and I can get a little bit directly on the cam stack gear. The tendency though is to over grease it. So, you know, when I first started doing it, put grease on every gear and plug it in and run it, and I'd have all this grease built up on the ends of the gear that wasn't doing any good. So after that, I just started greasing the one I have the most easy access to, and running it to spread to the other one. Yeah. Okay. I think it's looking pretty good. Let me go in. I think I am gonna, these grooves on this worm gear and the teeth on the cam stack gear are deeper than the gears on the shaft. They're a little bigger, stronger gears there. So I put a little bit extra on there, and this set of gears and the set of gears over here are the only set of gears on this machine. If you watched any of my other videos, you know, the 301, the 404, 503, they have dual gears on the bottom of the shafts and to run the hook. But since this is that oscillating hook, they don't. So all the other moving stuff is oil, and this gear set and the gear set in here is the only place for grease on this machine. And again, that your instruction manual talks about oil and grease, and the service manual. I'm gonna try and pick up my camera here before we end this, and just to see if I can get, I don't know if this will focus this close. If I hold it real still. Maybe if I zoom back out, because I zoomed in. That is not too bad. Get my pointer stick here. So this right here is the vertical gear on the horizontal shaft, and back down in here is where it meshes with the other. And now you can see the gear teeth on that cam stack. There's a nice view of that, really. So the other reason I like the clear synthetic gear is because if I ever open this up to do anything and that gear is turning, I mean the grease is turning dark, I know it's sucked up a lot of thread lint and dust. So I know it's time to you know, wipe it off with a rag, scrub it off with a toothbrush, and put some new fresh oil on there. So that's the other reason that I like that clear synthetic oil. So that's how it looks after it's all cleaned up. And the next video, I guess, which would be part 12, I'm going to take all my little bags of parts into the kitchen and lay them out on a towel and get my strainer and my crook cutter. I'm going to clean all those little parts and rinse them off then in the sink and put them on the towel, and they're small enough, dry them with the towel. Sometimes I use the hair dryer, but I'll show you how I bulk clean the little parts, and then we're gonna start checking the parts to see what needs polishing, and maybe use some of the polishing compounds and the Dremel to polish them up. And we've got to have to get this thing put back to bed together and set all the specs on it and test sewing and see if it's going to work again after I put it back together. But you can see how clean the my crazy backyard garden hose and leaf blower got it. Really sweet. This is turning out very nice. So that's the Tri-Flow oil and the Tri-Flow grease that I used, and how I do that. I'll probably finish up here a little bit. I just remembered I didn't oil brush the hook and some things like that. So I'll just make sure I got everything a little light coat of oil for now, and then next video I'll set up and I'll make the cleaning of the small parts. Thank you so much if you've watched these or any of them. For those of you that commented, it's really meaningful to me. I had a request to do this, and it sounded like a lot of fun. And I'm an amateur at this. I've done a few, but I'm by no means a pro. But these products were recommended to me by owner of a bicycle repair shop. They actually bought one of my machines, and then I checked with a couple of real professional sewing machine guys. One I met in another city here that has a shop, and one that's retired, living up in Canada. And they both were very aware of this product and said they doubted if I could find anything better than this for doing what I'm doing. So that's why I use it. We'll see you next time. Take care.